It does now seem likely that sometime in the last couple of days there's been perhaps the worst accident in the short history of the world's nuclear power industry.
От Совета министров СССР. На Чернобыльской атомной электростанции произошла авария. Поврежден один из атомных реакторов.
On the 26th of April, 1986, the fourth power plant of Chernobyl exploded. The incident holds a record for being one of the most severely rated of all nuclear energy accidents and is remembered as the worst nuclear disaster in history. But how could this incident be related to the downfall of the Soviet Union? In 1986, the Chernobyl power complex was located in Ukraine, a part of the former Soviet Union. It had been 3 years since the construction of Unit 4, with a total population of 115,000 to 135,000 within a 30-kilometer radius. Because of underprepared overnight experimentation run by plant operators who never received proper instructions about necessary safety precautions, a steam explosion followed by fire blew off the 1,000-ton roof, and the radioactive core of the reactor was left exposed to the atmosphere. Most of the radioactive material remained as dust and debris. However, lighter chemicals such as cesium, a dangerously radioactive element, and iodine-131, which can increase the chances of thyroid cancer, were carried over to parts of Europe. It was clear that an immediate evacuation of all citizens living nearby was necessary. However, nearby citizens remained unnotified until around 2 days later. The radiation levels of Chernobyl had already been recorded on the day of the explosion, but were ignored by Soviet officials. After a fully delayed day of taking out the fire, dropping sand and boron upon the exposed reactor, and cleaning up debris with the help of unprotected workers, the Soviet Union decided to evacuate people from Chernobyl. Here is a short audio recording from an evacuation announcement in Pripyat, a city nearby that housed 47,000 people, including the plant's workers.
Внимание, внимание! В связи с аварией на Чернобыльской атомной электростанции в городе Припяти складывается неблагоприятная радиационная обстановка. С целью обеспечения полной безопасности людей и в первую очередь детей возникает необходимость провести временную эвакуацию жителей города в близлежащие населенные пункты Киевской области. Для этого каждому жилому дому сегодня, 27 апреля, начиная с 14:00 часов, будут поданы автобусы в сопровождении работников милиции и представителей горисполкома. Рекомендуется с собой взять документы, крайне необходимые вещи, а также, на первый случай, продукты питания. Товарищи, временно оставляя свое жилье, не забудьте, пожалуйста, закрыть окна, выключить электрические и газовые приборы, перекрыть водопроводные краны. Просим соблюдать спокойствие, организованность и порядок при проведении временной эвакуации.
On the day of the incident, people were left puzzled as to why no official warning had been distributed. Children were given iodine tablets at school, and rumors quickly spread throughout the city of an emergency that had taken place in Chernobyl. Even on the day of the hurried evacuation, the 27th of April, confused citizens believed that they would be returning in 3 days and only packed things that were necessary, such as identity papers. However, an excursion zone was later set up around the town, blocking them from ever returning. It was Sweden who first alerted other countries that a nuclear accident had taken place. On the 28th of April, 2 days after the explosion, one employee from a Swedish nuclear power plant had his shoes tested high for radiation, and the staff analyzed to find that wind and rain had brought radioactive particles from the Soviet Union to Sweden. The crew then informed the Swedish authorities, who passed on the message through a map of Europe indicating radiation levels and wind direction. Soviet Union authorities claimed that though there had been an accident, the situation was under control.
4 months after the explosion, the Soviet Union officially announced its report on the accident. It mentioned that the population was evacuated from areas adjacent to the nuclear power plant and a zone with a radius of 30 kilometers around it immediately after the explosion. Moreover, they stated that the nuclear power displayed high levels of safety, which was contradictory to be written in an incident report. Additionally, they continuously restated that the incident at Chernobyl was the result of mere coincidences of several events of low probability, when in reality, they had performed the experiment while unsure of its risky consequences. The fact that the Soviet Union withheld information from the general public once again came up as an important issue. The communist group had a long history of keeping silent on serious matters when the situation became unfavorable for them. This was no exception for the Chernobyl incident. A lack of communication with citizens while covering up disadvantageous information gradually weakened the Soviet Union. The former president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, had newly introduced a political reform movement named Glasnost and then Perestroika in early 1980s. Glasnost, meaning transparency, was a policy in which the Soviet Union promised complete honesty and openness in terms of their own government. They guaranteed to let the citizens' voices be heard as a union would keep them alert of the crucial weaknesses of the government. However, this later could be proved to be deceitful pledge in the performance of the Soviet Union under circumstances such as the Chernobyl explosion, revealing to citizens that the government in which they were subjected to was a hypocrite. The policy of perestroika, which was a movement to improve the socialistic economy, also proved wrong. Because of this, Chernobyl was a great turning point. It was evident that the Soviet Union was no longer able to keep up their silence on its crucial mistakes. Chernobyl opened opportunities to speak up for many Soviet citizens.
The memory of the Chernobyl explosion still continues to haunt people of the risks related to nuclear power plants. Yet, the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian war has intensified these concerns. On March 4, 2022, reports of a fire at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine hinted at the potential of another nuclear disaster. Here is footage of the fire showing Russian troops launching attacks upon the nuclear plant. The fire was soon extinguished, but was brought to the attention of the media nevertheless. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged Russians to speak out on this matter, focusing on the power of unified voices fighting against another possible nuclear incident.
Russian people, I want to appeal to you. How is this possible? After all, we fought together in 1986 against the Chernobyl catastrophe consequences. You have to remember smoldering graphite, which was scattered across by an explosion.
Nuclear energy was the most revolutionary energy source when it was first introduced. It was considered to be less damaging to the environment than any other conventional energy source until the accident of Chernobyl in 1986. Some nations still argued that not utilizing nuclear power would cause an increase in the combustion of organic fuel, which would steadily increase the risk of human disease. However, the danger of nuclear energy was now known to people worldwide. The Chernobyl incident brought to light upon the flaws of the Soviet Union, while also increasing the search for freedom of speech within the communist society. In a way, the disaster shattered people's perception of the controlled regime through a wave of advocacy for freedom.